everybody on Zoom. Welcome. Monday, July 17th, general meeting of the Town of Southampton Trustees. Just want to ask everybody if they just make sure their phones are on silent. I'd like to start with the roll call.
President Scott Horwitz.
Present.
William Pell, Secretary of Treasury, is present. William J. Warner is absent today. Ann Walker.
Here.
William Parrish.
Present.
All right.
Turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so just for everybody's information, the next trustee meeting will be August 7th, Monday, August 7th, 9:30 a.m. will be the work session, followed by our 1 p.m. general session on that day. Minutes approval. We have a regular meeting of January 23rd, 2023, 1 p.m. meeting needs approval. Has everyone had time to review that?
Yes.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Welker. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Communications, there's been various communications that should have been placed in everybody's boxes, or you should have copies of them, so we could, I'd like to make a motion to dispense with the reading of these communications. Everybody can read them.
Second.
Okay. Seconded by Trustee Pell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have a couple of public hearings today. Why we have so many people here. Let's start with number one so we can keep things moving. Is that good with you?
Sounds good.
You want me to make a, I'll second you. Open it.
So the notice of the public hearing, let's open number one for the Blue Book A340, amending the management products of the waters of the town of Southampton, Article 2, Section 12, crafts.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Pell. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so let's open that hearing. I see we have Special Counsel Lombardo.
Good afternoon, everyone. The purpose of this amendment to the Blue Book was to aid in the enforcement of the taking of blue claw crabs in the town of Southampton. There seasonally will have traditionally been an influx of non-residents coming into the jurisdiction to crab for commercial purposes. They do not possess permits or licenses from DEC to do so. And the request was made that we limit the hours of crabbing and prohibit it between midnight and 5 a.m. This was at the request of Trustee Warner, who's not here with us today. And that is the amendment that I prepared for the board's consideration. It'll aid the Bay Constables in enforcing, it'll aid the police in enforcing, and hopefully it will stem the overtaking of blue claws in the area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
So basically, we're talking about several sections, say A, no person shall take female crabs bearing eggs visible thereon from town waters or offer for sale or possess same within the town of Southampton. B, crabs may be taken with a dredge, such dredge having an opening at the mouth not to exceed 36 inches in width when towed by a boat operated by mechanical power or other means, provided that such dredge is brought forward by hand power without the use of a mechanical device. C, notwithstanding any other division of law, no person shall take blue claw crabs less than 5 inches from point to point by any means from any town water. D, a commercial permittee shall have no limit on the number of blue claw crabs he may take per day. All other permittees may take up to 50 blue claw crabs per day. E, crabbing is prohibited between the hours of midnight to 5 o'clock in the morning.
That's the change.
Is the change.
Change.
Okay, so there's the rules
I think it's a good thing.
and the change. Yeah, so then you could get on this, because what's been happening is people have been going to these places, and it's not just happening in our town, it's happening in many other places. and they're-
East Hampton just did something similar to it.
Right. Points West as well are having a problem. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak on this topic, specific to this public hearing? Anybody from the public or anybody that's on Zoom that wants to have input on public hearing number one? No hands. Any of the trustees?
Nope. I think it's a good thing. You want to make a motion to close it and we vote on
Okay.
We've had difficulties with people coming from out of town for many years. It's not solely restricted.
So
Yeah, as far as a whole, it's very difficult to hear all of you, and even the speaker here.
Hey, Charles, can you speak, turn it up?
Or
Please.
it's the fans, probably.
Oh, yeah. I can turn it.
Thanks, Charles.
Thanks, Charles.
As I started to say, we've had troubles with the blue claw crab poachers for many years. It is not solely restricted to this municipality. It's an important step in as far as our taking any actions to try and restrict this behavior. So I think that we should move forward with this, close this and approve it.
Okay, so I will second your motion to close this public hearing. All in favor?
All right,
Okay, that public hearing is closed.
Just for the record, you do have a notice of adoption resolution in today's agenda, so you'll be able to make it go into effect immediately upon that vote.
Right, thank you, Joe. We'll
Thanks,
stay,
Joe.
we'll stay on top of, we'll stay on the agenda. Okay, so let's go to public hearing number 2, which I think is where the bulk of the public is here. So the notice of public to hear all persons for or against a request to alter the path of a proposed dredge project at Far Pond in Shinnecock Hills. So I'd like to make a motion to open up public hearing.
Second.
Second?
Seconded trustees Pell and Welker, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's open. Okay, so this is a problem that we've been dealing with for quite some time and trying to address the concerns of the environment and the community at Far Pond Road. We had a prior public hearing. There was a lot of good testimony. There was a lot of good commentary, a lot of good information that was heard. And I think that at this point, I want to call on Jim Walker from InterScience because the trustees engaged Jim's knowledge and expertise to help us work through, crafting a plan that is not so easy to craft because there's a lot of boxes that have to be checked, and there's also a lot of regulatory authorities that have to
Wayne?
kind of weigh in and be in synchronicity with whatever the plan is. And I think the public, you guys are great. I'm glad everybody's engaged, but it's a process, and I'm going to let Jim Walker.
Before we start, Charles, can you turn the TVs on in here?
This should be over here and over there so people can see what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
see, they got it on that side,
Yeah, but
not on this side.
Yeah, they gotta blow it up.
And the audience isn't on. Thanks, Charles.
Yep. Oh, look.
But we got all the latest and greatest technology here in the town of Southampton. And we got fans, too. Good old Block Island air conditioning.
What do you got, James? Anything?
Charles is working on it.
What do you want up first, Jim?
The plans, the Army Corps set.
That's now we.
There you go.
Beautiful. There you go. Thank you, Charles.
Yes.
Scott, we can get started. Well,
Yeah, now we lost that one. There we go. Go ahead, James. Go ahead.
We had sent a report to Scott Hillary from Suffolk County DPW in April. Subsequent, we had a public hearing. We got comments back from the county DPW, and we made a second submission in May, which was addressed to the Board of Trustees, but was also sent to Scott Hillary. And the way I understand it, we are starting to gain support at the county for the dredging. And basically what would happen is we're taking an old dredging channel that goes directly into Far Pond, and we're moving it, the terminal end to the north and to the west. And the reason being is that's where the channel used to be. The channel used to be in that location. We have various air photos that can be shown today. They're also in the report, which the community can foil if they want to review the report. The channel has been moved over to the east, and what's happened is the town property has eroded, and it's threatening and undermining Far Pond Road. So the trustees for what it's worth, have been attempting to resolve this issue in their own grassroots manners, and basically have moved sand from the sand spit that enters into Far Pond and putting it in front of Far Pond Road. In the short term, that's helped. And that's been underway for a couple of years, 3 or 4. And what I've been asked to do is get the dredging permits amended to show the channel to the northwest, but also to put spoil material on the beach in front of the rocks and in front of Far Pond Road and along the town property, which the trees are falling in the water, and extending over towards Middle Pond. The real problem here is when the county does the dredging, they pump the material to Middle Pond. Middle Pond used to be a skinny little sandbar. The sandbar is much wider, and the spoil site at the eastern end of the sandbar is very big, and it's very stable at this point. So what we're asking them to do, instead of pumping the material all the way over there, is also let us use the material in front of Far Pond Road. I have about 20 items that I took notes from for the last public hearing. If I miss any of them, I'll be happy to answer questions at the end. For the more recent report, I have flagged several items and sent them to James Durier. The first is a set of plans. Can you go through all the sheets? There's the change in the channel. The channel out into the bay doesn't change at all. The channel from the beginning of the sand spit to the west into the pond is shifted to the north and the west, and that is the old historic location of the dredged channel. By doing that, what we're trying to do is similar to what Cold Spring Point Association is asking for, is we're going to mechanically move sand into the location where the end of the road is eroded, where the town trustees' property is eroded in front of the rocks. You can go the next 2 sheets, one at a time. That's the dredge spoil sections. They're based on the county dredge spoil plans. Basically, this office has done this for the Board of Trustees prior. At Mill Creek, for instance, there's a thumb of sand that goes out into the channel, and I was asked by the trustees to get a permit for removing the sand and putting it on the beach in front of the little yacht club at the end of the road, and that has worked out. Suffolk County still has the dredging project, and what the local people should expect is the county's going to continue to dredge. And what the local people should also try to get their arms around and understand is the town is trying to also mechanically dredge and put the material right on the beach at the end of the Far Pond Road. James, can you go to Suffolk County DPW plans? Should be the next. Hopefully they're in order in your set. In any case, the channel that the county currently dredges goes a little bit to the north and east. And the real problem there is all that material goes down to Middle Pond. Middle Pond has gotten very big to the detriment of the end of Far Pond Road. It just goes to the north and the east. And instead of going to the north and the east, we're proposing to move the thing mechanically to the north and west. Once the thing is moved mechanically, the town can do maintenance dredging there and pull material out and put it in front of Far Pond Road and to the east. But also, the county can take over that channel and pump the material over to their dredge spoil site. They have a rule. They don't want to go within 500 feet of the inlet where they're dredging. But then the material can be moved back in front of Far Pond Road, and or they could bring the dredge spoil disposal pipes closer to the end of the road and put the material there themselves. So the town has two ways to handle it. They can mechanically move the channel once and put the material up on the end of Far Pond Road, or they can continuously maintenance dredge there and put the material mechanically up at the end of Far Pond Road. But the county can also assist by pumping the material to Middle Pond, but also along the beach where the erosion is happening, in front of the rocks, in front of Far Pond Road, and immediately adjacent to the channel. And I was advised that the county is amenable to moving the dredge pipes closer to Far Pond. So we're making progress with Scott Hillary. Suffolk County Department of Public Works has these materials, and we need to get an Army Corps of Engineers permit, we need to get New York State Department of State general concurrence, and we need to get New York State DEC tidal wetlands permit. All these permits require public notice. For all the people in the audience that are interested in doing the project, it would be helpful for them to support the town's effort. Written letters to DEC, Army Corps, or a group letter to the Board of Trustees is a way to get things done. For instance, Ann Welker has been part of a 2 or 3 year process. We're asking for permits to dredge at Fresh Pond. Basically, the whole thing has been supported by the adjoining property owners, and without that support, probably it would take even longer. But the end of 3 years, as of today, I saw the signed permit go back to the Army Corps, and then it comes back to the town. So for 10 more years, everything is in local hands. James, you got the recent air photo on there? Should be 2021 or so. Oh, those are even better. Let's stick with those. Go back to 1938. 1938, the town-owned property at the end of the road is very nice and stable. It's well vegetated. Everything's looking good. Go to the next one. 1941. This is from a report that the adjoining property owners have retained an expert on, and these reports are particularly good as resources. In 1941, there was a little cut into Far Pond. Far Pond used to be called West Pond, and Old Town Pond was East Pond, and Middle Pond's always been Middle Pond. But what you'll see there is the sandbars in front of Middle Pond are very narrow. There's almost no beach there, and in front of Far Pond Road, there isn't an erosion problem. So what happened? If you keep going down the maps, you will see that the channel into Far Pond has been growing, and the sand spit at the eastern end of Middle Pond has been getting bigger. And anybody that went to Southampton College when I did, that's where we used to have the tug of war. So if you lost the tug of war, you got pulled into the water at the end of Little Neck Road. But the important part is Middle Pond's doing great to the detriment of Far Pond. So what is the solution? The solution is put the channel back in approximately the same location it was in the 50s and the 60s. Short term, you can mechanically dredge and put the material up on the end of Far Pond Road and around the rocks and restore the town property. It would be good if it was planted. Beach grass is a good idea. And encourage in the long term to have the county DPW pump the material where they have to, but also to let the pipes place sand in front of the rocks and in front of Far Pond Road and on the eroded beach at the town-owned property, so that the dredge spoil disposal site at Middle Pond doesn't need help. What needs help is the area immediately south of Far Pond Road. So we're asking the county to consider allowing the dredge material to go there. I think that's the bulk of what I wanted to say. There are two items that are in the trustees' files. One is my May 11th report to the trustees, and it addresses each one of Scott Hillary's comments, as well as talking about what the general public feelings were on the property. The first one was our initial letter to Scott Hillary at Suffolk County Department of Public Works. It's dated April 3rd, and it had conceptual plans. What I would expect now is the plans that we put in the May 11th correspondence to the town trustees would be refined. And we would go further, get comments from the New York State DEC and the Army Corps, and continue with the cooperation of Suffolk County Department of Public Works. That's basically it. I'm here to answer any questions you
Now,
might
did you
have.
cover all, I know you took a lot of notes at the last meeting. Did you want to cover some of those notes and questions that were asked? That way, for the folks that asked them, you know.
I'm gonna cover the ones that I think are most important. So I think I have 20. Number one is we're gonna move the channel. Move the channel to the north and the west, approximately the location that James showed in 1941. Why it moved over, I'm not certain why. The second important thing is the sand would be used immediately at the end of of Far Pond Road and around the rocks and at the base of the eroded parts of the town-owned property. The sand that's been going to Middle Pond would partially be returned to the south end of Far Pond Road. We had a concern with the water flow into Far Pond. The old channel is going to be restored where it historically was. And my office has secured permits for various property owners on Far Pond. And it's shallow water, and we know that. And it's difficult to get dock permits there. And generally, you end up with a shallow water draft boat, and it's difficult to get in and out. So basically what we're heading for is the same water depths that are the controlling depths in Far Pond, and some of those may have to be staked out. Generally, the Board of Trustees will put out whips, guide us to the deepest parts of Far Pond, but the water flow into the pond is going to stay the same. We're putting one channel over slightly to take advantage of moving that sand to the end of Far Pond Road. We're not going to change the water flow in and out of the pond. The fifth one I had is we have Army Corps, Department of State, and New York State DEC permits to secure. Those applications were all filed. We will get technical unit directives from each of the federal and state agencies, and there will be public notice provided to the joining property owners, which the property owners could then respond to and voice their concerns. In terms of the pond health, best thing for the pond is to maintain the channel as best you can. So we're trying to get the channel dredged, we're trying to get the county to take over the long-term dredging, but also there's a fair amount of marsh that's covered up by sand, and the town trustees have been moving that sand to the end of Far Pond Road, to their credit. And the idea is to work on Far Pond water quality at the same time as moving the channel over, at the same time as moving the sand in front of Far Pond Road. Boat access isn't going to change. The boat access is going to be as good as it always was or as bad as it always was. The permits that we have for secured for property owners in Far Pond are all limited to what kind of boat you can have in shallow water. I would expect that those boat access issues are going to stay exactly the same. They're probably not going to improve. They're probably not going to be to the detriment. So we had a lot of comments. Fill in front of the revetment. The rocks are there. Before the rocks were there was Cap's Cottages there. When Cap's Cottages was there and I was in college, there was a bulkhead there. So the best we can do now is put sand in front of the rock revetment, in front of Far Pond Road, and in front of the town-owned property, and kind of also to the east, so that it matches the shoreline that has been filled in by the county pumping dredge spoils over there, to try to make a nice sand shoreline, even though we face southwesterly summer breezes. The plans are in front of the Suffolk County Department of Public Works. We have considered the expert report that was written up on this project, and the expert report is good. The only difference of opinion that I have with the expert report is, per my conversations with Ed Warner, I don't believe that dredging out into Shinnecock Bay through eelgrass beds is going to be allowed. So we are not turning the channel until we get basically to the corner in the existing channel, and we're going to head to the northwest instead of the northeast.
Could you just repeat that, what you said?
We're to avoid relocating a dredge channel out into Shinnecock Bay through eelgrass beds. We're not proposing to change any of that channel out into the bay. Nothing. If you do, it's going to be a problem. We're going to encounter a lot of resistance from the federal and state agencies, and I don't think they're going to allow that kind of change. And instead, we're taking the bend in the channel, which is where B and B prime are, and we're taking it from the northeast, we're pushing it back to the northwest, and that way it would be located in the channel that used to exist historically. If you look at the tax map resources, James, can you go back to the most recent air photo? All right. The tax map records show the end of Far Pond Road used to extend right across the channel. The channel used to be located between that end and the vegetation on the stable part of the sandbar there. So basically we're talking about shifting the north end of the channel. The north end of the channel being the parts that shoal in, it's the parts that need maintenance the most. And if I owned a boat there, that would be the part that I would be the most concerned about. But basically we're taking one project and moving it over a couple hundred feet. Again, it all works in conjunction with what Eric Schultz was doing at the time, which was taking sand and moving into the end of Far Pond Road. And that's a good faith effort of the town to try to resolve a local problem. And that's the kind of process that we expect for moving the channel. And then hopefully the county DPW will take over the project. They will put the permits in their name, and they will dredge the channel up to the change in direction and move it to the northwest each year, and then pump some of the material, maybe all of the material, to the end of Far Pond Road in front of the rocks and along the banks of the eroded town property. That's the basic concept. If you go all the way back to that other set of photos you had, the 1941 from the expert report that was made. Okay. If you look at the 1941 channel, it's very small. Okay, so maybe that was a small effort to get a title exchange into Far Pond. But that's the historical location of the cut. The cut has migrated to the east for whatever reason, not 100% sure, but the erosion that's happened to the end of Far Pond Road is chronic. That kind of thing only can be addressed by taking sand from an available source and relocating it from one spot to the other. So we're taking the sand out of the new channel, we're putting it in front of Far Pond Road and in front of the town-owned property, in front of the rocks, and then we're asking Suffolk County DPW to take over the project and pump material there on a long-term basis. I guess I didn't make it all the way through, Scott. Let me make sure that we had submitted this material in April to the Suffolk County DPW. We got Scott Hillary comments back from DPW. We resubmitted stuff to the trustees and mailed it to Scott Hillary. And as far as we are aware, Suffolk County DPW is considering pumping material right to the end of Far Pond Road. Typically, there's a 500-foot setback for dredge spoil disposal. When you're talking about dredging a channel, they don't want to come so close. At the end of Cold Spring Point Road, there are 3 properties that suffer bad erosion, and the county wouldn't pump the material directly in front of the house because it was too close. In the end, they changed their mind and they pumped the material in front of Evelyn Jacobs' house next to the rocks. And if you go down there today, Suffolk County DPW has made a minor change to their project, which has really helped out with erosion and a local condition at Cold Spring Point. So you have to request an exception to the 500-foot rule. That's what we did. Scott Hillary mentioned something, new dredging versus maintenance dredging. I think it's kind of true. This would be considered new dredging, but I think with the support of the local property owners and the Board of Trustees, that Army Corps of Engineers and New York State DEC will see fit to issue permits for the project. Generally, new dredging is anything that wasn't permitted within 20 years. There's a report to the trustees on file. All the material that went from Far Pond to Middle Pond is well documented in the air photos. Public access to the east, that's a really difficult subject, but your best bet is to get your backs collectively behind this project, encourage the town trustees to mechanically dredge as much as they can, and then encourage the Suffolk County DPW to long-term place the sand there instead of pumping it all the way down to Middle Pond Road, Middle Pond Inlet. Middle Pond Barrier Beach is doing great, has lots of piping plovers in these turns, that's a good thing. But right now, we need a lot of material in front of Far Pond Road. So this is a continuation of your hearing, which was May 15th, Scott. Suffolk County DPW has plans for putting the material in front of Far Pond Road, in front of the town-owned property, and wrapping around in front of the rocks to connect to the wide beach that goes off to the east. Now, that's all the 20 comments that I had. If I miss anybody's comments, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, hold on. Here's what we're gonna do. If there's questions that he hasn't covered yet, we've gotta do this very orderly. You can't call out from there. No one should be calling out from there. So raise your hand, and I'll call on you, and then you come up, he'll slide over, ask the question, and then slide out of the way, let him answer it. Let's remain orderly. 3 minutes is gonna be, because there's a lot of people.
And I have one person on Zoom.
And you have one person on Zoom, okay, great. Just state, everybody's gotta state your name for the record and sign in. I think, is the sign-in
Certainly.
sheet there?
Yes, I will. So my name is William Kinn, and I have a question. If you look at where you have the letter A there on the plan, right, at the end of the new dredging, or I believe there is a sandbar right where that channel would end, and in order to make it navigable, you would need to have to extend it a little more. If you go to the aerial photo that you put up previously, you would see that sandbar as well, that you can see it Yeah, basically there, exactly. Which may have been part of the reason they moved the channel to the east in the past. But I think that in order to make it navigable, you're gonna have to go a little bit further and take away some of that sandbar. My opinion, I don't know how viable or it is. And my other question is, how long will it take to get the permits to be able to do this?
You got to answer from the mic, Jim.
Tell you what, after the meeting, I'll fill in the.
Two things. Changes to a channel on paper is a good start. Actually getting engineered plans from Suffolk County DPW would be the proper way to do things. And yes, we have to get to the controlling depths of Far Pond period to keep the channel functional. So the fact that we run into a sandbar here, or we run into a sandbar at the north end of where they've been dredging, those issues are kind of similar and they're kind of the same. And that should be handled especially better if written comments are provided to the Board of Trustees telling them what your concern is so that they can be addressed intelligently. And getting permits for dredging took 6 years to get Mecox dredging permits. Let's see, about 2 or 3 years to get Fresh Pond. I would say it's gonna take a year on an optimistic basis to get Far Pond permitted and dredged properly.
Optimistically. Okay, is there a question on Zoom?
Yeah, I have a few people.
All right. You let somebody in on Zoom for a question?
They're coming in.
Okay.
Hello, I don't know if anybody can hear me.
Charles, we can't hear him.
Can anybody, is this any better?
Yes.
Okay, you have a question?
Yeah, so I'm Steve Malkinson, I'm at 72 Far Pond Road. So I just want to say I appreciate the efforts of the trustees in moving the ball forward. And I wonder, in response to the point that Jim made about it would be useful to receive letters from residents to both the trustees and perhaps the county and the state DEC, Army Corps of Engineers, whatever those respective bodies are. I would ask if there's a way that we could be provided those names and addresses in a way that we could reference this project. So if we want to send a letter in support, we know who to send it to, who to address it to, and how to refer to the project.
Right, I'm sure our office could provide that information to you. We could provide that.
Right.
Is there any other question? No other questions?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Fred King, 94 Middle Pond Road. Actually, the exact same point my brother brought up. On the map where you have that A, that sandbar has grown tremendously over the years. And it seems a lot of it is due to they don't or can't bring a typical dredge in further enough to reach into the pond, and they historically seem to stop short. So we can, emphasize that this does need to be addressed better, but it just seems that it needs to be taken into account that that sandbar on the northwest side of the cut, whatever location it is, needs to be addressed, because that's a result of, one of the results. The sand isn't all just going to Middle Pond. There's a fair amount of sand getting pushed into the pond that seems to need to be addressed.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
That's it? Okay, how about in the audience? Okay.
Hi, Alma Lillian Kin. You've got a lot of Kins here today. Just a couple of clarifications. When the channel rather is moved, what happens to the existing channel?
Go down and watch Mecox get dredged. Basically, they take the material, they pull it out of one area, they put it they swing a hydraulic excavator sideways and they put the material down. And they build a whole road out by picking up the material and putting it to the east. So basically, you can dredge anything if you have the ability to get a big enough hydraulic excavator, pull the material out, set it down, and make yourself a haul road, and you could reposition that channel with a hydraulic excavator, period. Hydraulic excavator is a long reach backhoe. It's just a big backhoe. So they can do it and they can pinpoint it, and where past dredging events have failed, maybe that the trustees would be asked in the future to help out with mechanical equipment instead of always resolving everything with a hydraulic dredge. Hydraulic dredging is mostly done by the county, and they have a lot of places to dredge, and they have a very small budget, and they have a very limited dredging window to do it. So in all reality, they probably need help. And help is generally mechanically dredging.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, just to clarify, so you're saying as they dig out where, the new channel, they're gonna be dumping it ostensibly into the old channel?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And where they can't dredge from one side, they would drive a backhoe to the other side.
Okay. There was, I know you noted many times that they're looking to, it sounds like they're agreeing to put some of the additional sand at the end of Far Pond Road despite the 500-foot rule. Would any of this sand be going over the rock rebatement in order to allow access to the other side of where the rock rebatement currently is?
Those are types of details that would be best addressed as we go through the process and draw up formal plans. But yes, we would expect the sand to go up onto the rock revetment a little bit, the sand at the end of Far Pond Road to a bigger extent, and sand in front of the town-owned property a lot to try to restore the town-owned property to what it used to be. Familiar with what the town-owned property used to be. If you go down there today, there's trees that fell down into the water. But also the dredge spoil would extend over to the east and shape that piece of property so the shoreline is continuous. And that would help. You're still gonna have southwesterly problems. Southwesterlies across Shinnecock Bay are strong and they're dramatic. And we've had storms where a lot of stuff happens. So would the sand stay over the rocks? Yes, partially. Would the sand wash up into the rocks? Absolutely. Is that the idea? The idea is to restore the thing back to where it was before the dredging channel went off to the north and the east. Why it was sent off to the north and east, I do not know, but maintaining even the end of the channel is something that the local people can work on with the Board of Trustees and the County DPW.
And then my one other question is, I just want to clarify that, in your opinion, the only difference between your proposal and the one that was done by Mark Burns is that you would not be coming all the way out into the bay because of the eelgrass? Or are there more differences?
No, that's it. The proposal that adjoining property owners paid for is a good and sound project. Resolves basically the same issues the Board of Trustees have been asking me to try to get my arms around. The only problem is you can't pick up a dredge channel wholesale and move it 100 feet or 200 feet because in Shinnecock Bay we have tropical fish, we have eelgrass beds, we have shellfish resources, and you can't get permits to go and make a new channel in the eelgrass beds. It's a bad idea. It's not something that the federal government is going to support. At the Army Corps of Engineers, you have to get National Marine Fisheries Service, you have to get the EPA, and you have to get U.S. Department of Interior Fish and Wildlife Service. All have to sign off on a project before you get a permit. You have to show overwhelming evidence that you're not causing a problem to eelgrass beds. It's like the number one issue that probably the number two issue would be shellfish. There's clams in every part of those eelgrass beds. Mostly people don't clam in eelgrass beds because it's too hard. But if you go out there and kick them up with your toes, you'll find eelgrass beds are incredibly productive in terms of hard clams, in terms of, that's where scallops grow. It's like a nursery, and it goes out a long ways into Shinnecock Bay. You can look at any of the air photos that we provided, and you'll see the eelgrass bed. It's really obvious. And I told Ed Warner early on in the process, yeah, we can try to help out, but we're not going to propose to change the channel into a new eelgrass bed. It's just bad science.
Could you just give us an idea of where the eelgrass beds begin? Would that be C?
Right where C is.
That's where they begin?
Yep.
Right.
Okay, so ostensibly, your plan would be dredging from C to A.
Yeah, and it probably isn't going to be exactly that channel, but it's going to be something close. And what we're trying to do is get the county DPW to fully support the project. They've been reasonable with the trustees in the past. If they're reasonable in front of the trustees and support the project, and we have the support of the local people, we may succeed at Army Corps of Engineers and USAPEC. The hurdles are high. These are not easy people to get. I've been pushing dredging permits for the last 39 years. It's one of the hardest things that you can possibly take on. It's not easy to do, and without the full support of the public, we're not going anywhere.
I think what's important to understand is when he was asked a time frame on getting permits, he gave a very optimistic. Okay, I've been here for 10 years, 4 years prior on the Conservation Board. Worked for 6 years getting the permits for MECOX. I understand. He gave an optimistic timeline for that because the trustees have tried to be collaborative with you as the public and with all these other regulatory authorities, so we're not spinning our wheels all over the place. The trustees have also worked very hard with many organizations to rebuild eelgrass beds in the town because it's like the start of the food chain of the whole bay system. Scallops and shellfish and crab. So we're not, and nobody is going to be, just indiscriminately wanting to harm that. To his point of it may get tweaked here and there. So what we're trying to deliver is a product here, a project here, getting everybody's input and concerns and trying to check the boxes of all the regulatory authorities and then getting the county to buy in their maintenance program so that it's a continual, because it's a dynamic area. The prevailing southwesterlies are not going to go away. We're going to continue to get pounded. I mean, look what happened to us all yesterday. Rain for our region. So we're battling Mother Nature. There's no question about it. But I think that everybody in the room and the trustees, expertise from Mr. Walker and his company, and all of the collaborative efforts going on with the other regulatory authorities, I think we stand an optimistic chance at getting a resolution here. Perfect? Nothing's ever perfect. We're not in a perfect world. But we're battling Mother Nature. There's a lot of people with a lot of energy and a lot of care and a lot of thought that are trying to see this through. And I think we're going to take the most optimistic approach at getting this done. So,
One last question.
you have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you. What is the next step? What will be happening next?
Well, the next steps are, we have to continue in our work product. I mean, say what you gotta say today is the public, because, so we hear what your concerns are, but realistically, we know what your concerns are. Then we have to be able to roll up our sleeves with Jim and everybody else to get to work on getting permits and then getting everything behind us. Funding, the county, there's a lot of moving parts here. We get it, we understand. We're working with good people, we're listening to the input, but we have to have the time to do our jobs. And so that's really the next step.
Preparing to permit is the next
There's
step?
a lot of back and forth. He's already on his way. There's a lot of back and forth with these regulatory authorities. There's a lot of meetings and phone calls that go on behind the scenes that we have to do. Public input is great. Everybody's watching. Everybody watches these meetings. So they hear you, they see, they're trying to understand, and they're trying to check all the boxes of what the concerns are for the community. All right? But once we get through that, we can close the public hearing because we know what the concerns are. Then it's about us doing what it is that we have to do behind the scenes to make these things go. Before we got awarded permits for Cox or any of these projects, there's a huge amount that goes on that the public doesn't see to make it happen. And then you gotta figure out how to pay for it all.
And how can we, as the public, excuse me, let me finish my question, understand where in the process you're at?
Well, the reality is that people have called myself as the president of the trustees from time to time, and I've been as cooperative and communicative as I possibly could on where we're at and what the challenges are. But I think what's helpful with any of these projects is, as indicated by Mr. Walker, public input from the community is always important on support on projects. I can tell you that this problem is going on at many road ends throughout the town, in many areas of the town. But this is getting a lot of attention because you guys have been organized and you've properly tried to address this, and people are working with you now. And I think the important thing to do is to keep all these other regulatory authorities engaged on trying to find a resolution to a very difficult problem. So people can call me at any point in time as the president, but understand, I mean, this is he gave you an optimistic at a year. It could be longer than that, but people want to get things done. But people can call at any point in time, and you're always welcome to come on your public portion and speak to the trustees about any issue that there is. You have a lot of really great people in your community that stay engaged with us all the time over the issues. But everybody's got to understand we've placed this responsibility in the hands of very knowledgeable, capable, educated people to help get the trustees through this process. So we're investing money into this as well for you, as is the county and so forth. So any point in time, you can check in with me or check in with any of the trustees. We take a lot of pride in being a board that's very close to the people. We're right here, we understand, we get it, and that's not going to change.
But if you're wondering what you can do, there's a room full of people here that I think you've been involved with, engaging with, and communicating with. You heard the suggestion that it would be great if we had that public support in email so that we could pass that on, so that the agencies that we have to interact with, and you heard it's numerous agencies, know that there's a room full of people here that are on board with this. So whether that's a singular email that represents the community, or whether it's many, it doesn't matter. But that's something that you could do to help.
Right. It's great justification for the amount of time that people are spending working on resolving an issue. You have a tremendous amount of public input, public concern. So I applaud it.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else with something that we didn't address? Okay, how many we got? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to try and keep this because we got a bit of a big agenda, so a couple of minutes apiece. So Jill, I see you've had your hand up for a while. If you want to come on up.
Jill Schwartz.
Jill, bring the mic. Yeah.
Okay. Regarding sending letters, 25 letters from the community were sent at the request of Scott last, when was it, Scott? About a year ago.
Right.
And a whole package was given to Suffolk County. So we can do that again, but they are well aware of, the concerns, and they also have a copy of the report from Applied Coastal.
And to your credit, I think it was very helpful in getting us where we're at today, so I appreciate your involvement.
So, thanks. I just want to point out that I understand what you're saying. Here's a picture. Go back to the first one. This was before. Keep going. Keep coming back. I think you're backwards. Keep going. This should be the one that was before 1950.
That's all I got.
Oh, there were 2 emails. All right, well, we've submitted the picture before. What it looked like, the pictures I submitted were 1990, there you go. Okay? 1995, you can see where the road end is. Mr. Malkinson's driveway's all the way over there. And then the pictures are now. I know Scott has been down there. I don't know if the other trustees. My question is, if you go to the pictures currently, how much more time do we got? Because it can't get any worse. So my questions are, I understand using the sand to fill in the existing channel. Oops, sorry. Is it
Some feedback or something.
What can we do so that Jill's not giving us feedback?
Wait,
Yeah, there you go, Josh.
Stand back.
That's better. Thank you, Charles.
but how much sand, I see, based on the picture, is there enough sand? You have to fill in the existing channel, and you're putting sand in front of front of the shoreline. Is there enough sand to take care of both problems? To fill in, or are you out of sand once you fill in the existing channel?
Jim, you gotta answer from the mic.
Sorry.
There's a lot of sand that extends into Far Pond. The amount of sand that's there is huge volume. The ability to stabilize the end of the road and to stabilize the town property and to stabilize going around to the east to make the shoreline to Middle Pond Channel effectively straight. That sand is right there. All the sand is there. The material that would be excavated would be simply to relocate the channel, but there's still all that sand that's involved in that extension of the sand spit up into Far Pond and extension of that sand spit on the east side that's overlaying tidal marsh. So the fact of the matter is there's a ton of sand there. In the long-term run of things, all that sand will eventually get eroded. So what do you hope for in the future? You hope for in the future to have the maintenance dredging of Far Pond be placed in the end area around the end of Far Pond Road at the town property and going to the east. Instead of all being pumped up to Middle Pond, if you looked at the air photos that your company provided, in 1941, the sand spit in front of Middle Pond was very narrow and small, and now it's huge. So is there enough sand? The answer is yes. There's plenty of sand. Will it get resolved overnight? No. Will it get resolved the first time through? Probably not. You need to have a long-term approach to things, but the town trustees have also offered a short-term approach, which is mechanical dredging, that would resolve a lot of the issues for the short term.
Do the trustees have money to, because if I understood correctly, Suffolk County doesn't do a mechanical dredge, so is that if that was...
We don't know where we're at on the budget side of this. We don't know where we're at. And they do have mechanical dredgers too.
Oh, okay.
I believe they
I missed
purchased,
some.
no, I believe they purchased some of that equipment.
They have about 60-foot, I suppose.
Yeah, they purchased some of that equipment. So a lot of this is gonna be a work in progress as we move through. So we're not gonna have every answer to every question today.
All right, what will stop the erosion? I mean, there's a 300-foot rock revetment, including a new rock revetment that's perpendicular to the shoreline. So if you put new sand there, what would stop the erosion, when you move Chesterfield, is it Chester? I mean, there's a rapid erosion still because you do have that large revetment. So how would that change?
Putting sand in front of it. We're not going to change the erosion. There's going to be erosion from the southwest. It's going to be chronic, and it's always going to happen. So basically, you're talking about putting sand in front of it, extending the shoreline, and nice and fat all the way to Middle Pond, around to the town-owned property, and resolving the erosion that happened over the years at the town-owned property. So that's the proper way to address it. That's what your report says. Short of moving the whole thing over to the west, the idea is to take that sand and put it at the town-owned property in front of our pond, in front of the rocks, so that shoreline extends now to the west.
Hey, Jim, I think you gotta go to the mic.
Or just spin the mic, or
Something,
or
yeah.
maybe use marks. I don't know.
Something.
Spin the mic? Okay.
He's done.
Okay. So Applied Coastal that you referenced that we did, he talked about moving it back where you were talking about, but that, in his report, he said that's about 250 feet west, which I understand what you're saying. But the way he explained it was that causes, by having it where it is, that's causing a lot of erosion pressure too, besides the rock revetment. So if you move it like you're talking about, will that take erosion pressure off the east side of the channel and that shoreline?
Again, we're talking about moving it as soon as we get through the eelgrass beds and angling it back to where it always was. And will that resolve all of the erosion? No. But will it resolve the bulk of it? Yes. It will allow the town and the county to control a problem that's at the end of a town-owned road and along the beach and along the town-owned property, which has eroded back a lot, several hundred feet at some point. From when I first came to Southampton College in 1977, we walked down there and the cedar trees were all the way to the water, and now they're not. So the idea is to move it over as far as we can, but not changing the direction through the eelgrass beds.
That was 3 minutes. What about there's a sandbar, besides what the Kins were talking about, there's a sandbar right at the end, right in the bay there. And that's a big sandbar. Which, in the bay. No, there's this whole sandbar in the bay, right? If you kept, you know what I'm talking about, right? Between where the rocks are and where the end of the road is. And that was talked about clearing that out and using that sand also to,
Well, we're not there in this thing right now. I mean,
be separate.
we'll look at that suggestion, but we're looking at what he's got on this as a discussion, and again, it's a work in progress, Jill, and
So, just, I had read this in November 2019 at the first hearing, but this is a letter from Andrew Walker, again, this is from then, where he states in it that, it's reasonable to put some of and that the Suffolk County DPW has to request, based on you putting in writing to Suffolk County DPW, and that there would be a permit modification allowing material to be placed at the end of the road. So, he was on board. And that was, we raised that in November 2019. Hopefully he'll still be on board, but,
Right.
That was there.
He's still there.
He's
Yeah.
still there.
Oh, no,
That's-
he's still there, yeah.
We're lucky.
No, I know, yeah. No, but I mean, hopefully he'll still, oh, yes. No, he supports moving the channel, based on. And finally, last thing is, the correspondence you're referencing from Suffolk County, I asked last time, is that something that we can see? So we see what their concerns are, we know how to
foil
address
for whatever
it?
documents we have, right? Just foil for whatever documents you need, and they'll get them to you in the office.
Foil, okay.
Yeah.
And you did say something about, if I understood right, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure about putting beach grass across the end of the road. That would stop our access. So is that no longer a plan?
Beach grass is important to stop erosion. At the current end of Far Pond Road, there is a cobble path down to the water, which always is going to be needed. So would they still be able to have a path down to the water? I'm sure that they would.
Sure. All right, somebody else?
There's no cobble path, but I'm not gonna argue with that.
All right.
It's dangerous.
Okay, I gotta get to some other folks, and please, we're trying to do 3 minutes, because we have a big agenda, but go ahead up. Mark running away. Jim, you wanna sit in Mark's seat while he's out?
I don't want to be a lawyer.
We get,
You have
we'll
to
just
sign
this
too.
thing. You have to state your name for the record and sign in, please.
I'm Judy Dominski, and this is
Sadie.
Sadie Dominski. What's your question, Sadie? we be able to walk down to the beach and pull the wagon down?
What was the second part? What'd you say?
And pull the wagon onto the beach like they used to?
Jim, you want to answer that, Jim?
You don't have to run away, it's okay. The whole idea is to put sand at the end of the road and around in front of the rocks. So the answer would be, is if we can do it, and if the county will give us permits, if the Army Corps will give us permits, if the DEC will give us permits. So the answer is yes.
And, you know, she speaks for Sadie, Tanner, Hannah, Oliver, Noah, Jack, all of the other children that are always going down to the end of Far Pond. We like to, when we go to the end of the road, we like to go both east and we like to go both west. So we would like access to both parts of the beach. They enjoy going, when we get to the end, going to the left and having little picnics on the beach and walking down the beach and collecting shells. And, you know, also in the pond, we like to go kayaking in the pond all the time. So, you know, we're just really asking that you do what's best for all of the kids and all of the community, and even for myself and all the elderly people who have trouble walking down from the road onto the beach. With all those rocks there, it's not very safe.
That's what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, the trustees exist as the oldest elected board in the country with always an eye towards the future generations. So that's why we're spending so much time working with folks like Jim and the rest of the regulatory authorities to figure out, again, in a very difficult situation, what it is that we can do. Stopping erosion altogether and, rolling things back to the way, some of this stuff is not realistic, expectation. But doing the best that we can with the resources that we have is what we're trying to do here right now. So you got a very good shot at being able to do what it is that you want to do. It's going to take a little time.
Say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you for coming up.
Okay. Okay, come on up.
I'm Jill Gelomino on Middle Pond. What brought me here was same thing that brought Katie and her mom here. The cosmetic, the appearance, the use of the beach, or now not being able to utilize the beach, whether to the left or to the right, because what I see are more like the pictures that Jill Schwartz presented. So I kind of know the end result is probably to get more access to the beach like we used to have. I don't really understand, and we're probably not the time to fill me in on what changed so quickly, and why it changed quickly. But I do have a question. You talk about the new plan in terms of dredging. What's the impact on Middle Pond and Middle Pond beaches around the whole Middle Pond area?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Middle Pond is in much better shape. Not receiving all the sand from Far Pond will probably impact Middle Pond shorelines to some extent as well. So we would expect there is going to be some moderate impact to Middle Pond shoreline by taking away some of the sand. However, Middle Pond is getting bigger. The shoreline is accreting. It's getting to be a significant sand spit to the detriment of the end of Far Pond Road. So it's a fair trade-off to take some of the sand and put it at the end of Far Pond Road where it's needed worse.
Right, so what you're talking about is having, getting this channel reestablished and having the county on the maintenance side take it back over, and then they could make management decisions on where material goes from, dredge event to dredge event based on their survey of the area and the dynamics of what's occurred in the region to try and rebuild it. But you have to get to that point where you can manage that dynamic, and we're not there.
And the county did it at Cold Spring Point. They changed their rules, they made an exception, they went closer than the 500 feet, and it helped save the 3 properties just to the east of that rock revetment.
Right.
So these things can be managed. You can get permits.
The key is managed. You're not going to take an action and it's gonna cure the problem. It's gotta be continual management of an area that is highly dynamic. But until you get to this point and get to where you can enter into that management, we're nowhere.
It's hard. It's not an easy thing the Board of Trustees face.
Correct. Anybody else have anything new to add? Okay. Because at some point, we gotta get to work.
My name is Bill Safarik. I live at 34 Pond Road. I just have one quick question. I know it's going to take a long time. Everything looks good here, what you're doing. Maybe we can restore it back to where it was and everybody be happy. My question to you is, temporarily, is there anything that you can do? Like you did maybe I think it was 3 years ago, you trucked in some sand and put it to the west of Far Pond Road, and that lasted about 3 years. So that we could have something temporarily, because I know this is a long process, like you said. It may take 1 year, it may take 3-4 years, but in the meantime, you go down there now, and that's what you see. So there's no beach there, you know. And you did put the last meeting. I think it was Mr. Warner said they dumped some sand. Well, I went down there and looked at it. It doesn't look like sand to me. It looks like debris and dirt. And that, okay. And now this debris, we have all weeds coming up. So now you can't even get to anywhere.
Right.
You know, I'm waiting for the signs.
Well,
do not enter, no fishing, no beach. You know, I mean, that's the way it looks now. I was just wondering, is there temporary?
Can't answer your question from the bench here right now, but because this is also an issue that the highway superintendent is also working on, because he's concerned about a town asset, a
Right.
road end.
Right.
So, again, some of it, you know, we understand, we hear you, and I appreciate your comment, because that's what everybody was trying to do, was get something that they had. You know, I'm sorry that the quality of the sand isn't, you know, grade A beach compatible sand, but the intent was to try and do something. So we're gonna have to continue on these conversations internally to figure out how we resolve that, how we try and protect this road end, how we stem the tide, so to speak, while we're working on all of this.
Okay.
So we appreciate your comment.
All right.
We're looking at the same concerns as you. But like I said, at some point, we gotta get to work, and that all happens, you know, differently. You know,
I understand that,
yeah.
but I mean, it could take 3 years. So in
Could
3
take-
years,
it
I'm
could
saying,
take 3 years.
if you right now did what you did 2 years ago or 3 years ago and dumped that sand, I mean, we had a pretty nice beach from the west
But
of Far.
we're in the same boat. We just have to be able to locate good compatible material and work the logistics on things like that. And again, then we'll have a storm, and like you said, it'll all be gone. It's a constant dynamic. So we're working on this with the highway super, trying to identify areas where we can
Okay.
get good sand. Like Mead Cox, we have all the sand, great sand, beautiful sand. We can't bring it here.
Right.
We're governed by regulations not to bring it here. It's got to stay in a certain littoral system.
Right.
So there's all this going on. So
All I wanted is to make sure that you had a concern that maybe you could do something temporarily, you know, that would help everybody in the community to have a little beach until we resolve it with this man here.
Right, we're trying to work through that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mark, did you want to weigh in now?
Sure, yeah. I know there's been involvement with the county and the state DEC. Has there been any outreach to the town of Southampton? I know the state DEC, can you hear me okay? It's not on?
Speak loud, Mark.
How about now? Any better?
Yes.
All right. I know the state DEC is involved and the county is involved. Has there been any outreach to the town of Southampton? So I believe if you GIS both pieces of land to the left and right of the old channel location, they show as town of Southampton. So as your lawyer, I'd recommend outreach to the town to the extent they're a necessary party so that the process doesn't get slowed down at the last moment.
Okay, Mark, thanks. All right, is there anybody else? We good? All right, So that being said, say trustees want to say anything other than I think it's time to close this public hearing.
We'll close it for 30 days or
Well, I
14
would
days
just-
with, any written
Well, yeah,
conversation.
we'll, yeah, 14 days, 2 weeks. How many days of written comment period? What do you think? 30, 15? We good? We got a lot of comments. I think we're good. Mark?
Whatever you wish, whatever time period you wish, 2 weeks, 30 days, you can.
Jim? I'd motion that we close
Yeah,
this
do
public
the
hearing.
30 days, because you might have some more
Right.
comments coming,
Yeah.
update comments.
We'll close the public hearing and we'll leave the comment period open for 30 days.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, public hearing's closed. Thank you for your participation, folks.
Thank you.
Wow, that's an efficiency. You'll be in here.
Okay. How about public? Huh? I know. I know, it's horrible.
It's cold in the wall. But it'll go in the wall.
Anybody here need to address, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you. Anybody want to address the board on public portion? It's public portion time. Hey, Charles, anybody on Zoom with your hand up for public portion?
No, sir.
Thank you. All right, so we'll close the public portion part of our meeting. Let's go right to the applications for permits. Board of Trustees hereby waives a public hearing on the following applications because it has been determined that the following projects do not raise significant degree of public interest or public input is not needed to aid in the decision-making process.
Hey, Jim?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, trustee resolution 2023-195. It's a modification application of permit GP 000038 Kitty Doe LLC, 37 Second Neck Lane in the Village of Quogue. Recommended approval.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Pell, all in favor? Got 2023-196, modification application GP 000434 Thomas A. Anderson, 9 Duckwood, tax map 900-172.1-1-5. Recommended
Second.
approval. Seconded, trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee resolution 2023-197, modification application, permit GP 000271 David Mary Beth Lahias, 22 Post Lane in Village of Quogue. Tax map 902-14-1-47. Recommended approval.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee resolution
Hang on, I think I got one more, right?
You do.
Oh, yeah.
I got
Top of page
2023-198.
Yeah.
Application of Susan Baker, 26 Bonita Road, East Quogue, tax map 900-362-4-29. Recommended approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Trustee resolution 2023-199. It's a renew application, first time for GP 00470 Cold Spring Point Association, Cold Spring Pond, Tuckahoe, New York, tax map 900-156-1-1 body of water.
Second.
Good, Conakry.
Seconded, trustee Parish, all in favor?
Aye. Trustee resolution 2023-200. It's a modified application for GP 00274 for Williams and Barbaretta at 599 Meadow Lane, Village of Southampton, tax map 904-24-19 body of water, Taylor's Creek.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Parish, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee resolution 2023-201. Application Bellhead Yacht Club, 362 West Neck, North Sea. Tax map tax map 900-110-1-17.1 body of water, Bullhead Bay.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Parish, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee resolution 2023-202. Renew application, second time for GO 00313 Town of Southampton, North Sea Harbor, North Sea, tax map 900-60-3-1 body of water, North Sea, and Alwye Creek.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Parish, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Trustee Warner has applications. He's got 2023-203, application of Robert Drake, 25 Nautilus Drive, Hampton Bays, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 900-322-3-16 on Wells Creek. Recommended approval.
Second.
Seconded, Trustees Pell and Welker, all in favor?
Aye.
We've got Trustee Resolution 2023-204, modification application of GP 0000372, Vienna Family Revocable Trust, 176A Bay Avenue, tax map 900-324-2-9, Shinnecock Bay East. Recommended approval.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
We've got Trustee Resolution 2023-205, modification application GP 0000191, Jimlin Realty Corp., 47A Lynn Avenue, Hampton Bays, tax map number 900-269-2-17.03. Recommend its approval.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
He's got 2023-206. It's the application of Alice M. DeGennaro, 310 East Montauk Highway, Hampton Bays, tax map 900-230-3-24. The body of water is Shinnecock Bay East. Recommend its approval.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Next is 2023-207, application of iVision LLC, 7 Tanner's Neck Lane, West Hampton, New York, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 900-382-1-44.1, body of water, Moriches Bay. Move to have this approved.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Let's see, we have a authorizing resolution installation of oyster and clam farms. This one here, I think has to be
Put on
tabled.
table.
I don't think this is ready to go, so
No.
I would make a motion to table 2023-190. Table it, seconded by Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
When are
so
you
that-
tabling it until?
Let's table it to the next meeting when Trustee Warner can advise us of whether or not he's resolved whatever issues needed to be
Thank you.
resolved.
Trustee Resolution 2023-208, this is a resolution authorizing the president to sign the memorandum of agreement with the Village of Sagaponack. I'd like to recommend its approval.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2023, authorize the close of trustee easement on Sabonic Beach during the fireworks display on June 28th, 2023. July, excuse me. Thinking of last month already. Look for the approval on this. Again, it's July
July
28th.
28th, 2023.
One quick
23.
update, Plover situation,
Yes.
the chicks are not there anymore, according to Nature Conservancy. So
Okay.
it is open to 4x4 driving as of last week when I emailed
Yeah,
you
we
guys.
saw
So.
that email. Thank you.
Thank you. Beaches are starting to open back up again. Okay, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Trustee Resolution 2023-210, resolution authorizing the president to sign a letter of permission for Southampton Yacht Club Regatta to park on Little Neck Road in Southampton.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Got Resolution 2023-211, authorize retaining the professional services of Robert Young, Ph.D., consulting and review of the living shoreline projects on Dune Road in West Hampton.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
You're up, Ann.
I know, it's not mine, but I'll read it. Trustee Resolution 2023-212, this is to authorize InterScience for professional services regarding 10-year dredging permit from New York State DEC, Army Corps of Engineers, and Department of State at Fish Cove Bridge in North Sea, authorizing the president to sign the necessary documents. I'd like to recommend its
Second.
approval.
Seconded by Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
We got Trustee Resolution 2023-213 to authorize InterScience for professional services for modification of dredging permit for Far Pond for 20.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye. Trustee Resolution 2023-214. This is amendment to the Blue Book, Article 2, Section 12, to prohibit crabbing between the hours of midnight and 5 in the morning.
Second.
I'd like to recommend its approval.
Seconded by trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2023-25,
215.
215, Budget and Finance. Warrant 12 of 2023, as per recommendation review from the Town Comptroller, the following vendor payment warrant 12 should be approved for the amount of $96,826.26. Be Ready, $9,156.25. Fisher's Sign, $900. PSEG LI, $19. Riverhead Bone Supply, $358.71. Town of Southampton is $86,392.30, an amount of $96,826.26. Recommend.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Welker, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that concludes the bulk. I know we had some discussions earlier. Any further discussion? I know we were working diligently to try and get me Cox and Sag squared away. Even since this morning, I've been back and forth with people, trying to get where we need to go.
On that, I've been answering all their questions in regards to the endangered and threatened species down there. So
Thank you.
every
Greg,
other
for-
email is another question. So
Right, well, the trustees fully has the boots on the ground. Okay, board, understand the urgency in the situation to the farmers and the local residents and commercial fishermen, recreational. We understand we're doing everything that we possibly can to be in compliance with our permits and with all federal, state regulations, right? We're doing the best we can. Everybody's on notice, right?
Yep.
So we're just gonna keep working. Even when the cameras go off, we're still working.
We understand the urgency, and we're working as diligently as we can.
Okay, we had a successful public hearing. I'd like to thank my fellow board members. I think we do need to adjourn this part of the meeting and go into a quick executive session. The purpose of discussing personnel and for legal, confidential legal advice concerning litigation and other matters. Okay, so I made the motion.
Second.
Seconded trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, have a great day, everybody.